Hey everyone, welcome back to the Endurance School. Hopefully you are joining us again after watching me suffer on my bicycle at Sufferfest this morning. I'm feeling a whole lot better than I was then because we are joined here today by a very special detention guest. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris Bagg to do a little introducing, but I think you guys are in for a whole lot of fun.
Um, Welcome to Detention, everybody. Thank you for being here. Tonight we are super excited to be joined by Michael Marckx. There is a little triathlon and on the U.S. national triathlon team in 1987. He turned professional in the early 1990s at triathlon before his athletic career was derailed by a motorist who hit him while he was out training. He moved into a career in marketing and race promotion, directing Gatorade's title sponsorship of the Ironman World Championships in Kona for years, and helping brands such as Optic, Ocean Pacific, 100%, Nixon Watches, and Adidas Watch fulfill their potential. He's also served on the board of the Surfrider Foundation, first as a member and then as a chairperson for 4 years. He's founded Monuments of Cycling, a race promotion company that owns and operates the Belgian Waffle Ride, the most unique cycling event in the United States. He's given a TEDx talk. He's a lifelong musician. He's the chief marketing officer at Eliel Cycling and Wattie Ink. He is coming off of a weekend of organizing the Cedar City edition of the Belgian Waffle Ride in southern Utah. And he has Oregon and Belgian roots, which is why we love him so much. Michael Marckx, welcome to Detention.
Hola. Thank you for having me. That was an interesting intro, and it actually makes me sound like I'm a fairly diverse and interesting individual, and both of you know by now that I'm not, but I'm going to do my best to impersonate somebody that is.
That has not been the impression that I've gotten so far. I think diverse and interesting are two adjectives that I will apply pretty liberally to. I did not know. Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I didn't know about the OP part of your background. Ocean Pacific clothed my entire swim career, so I'm a huge fan.
It's funny, as a 13-year-old, I was an OP model. I know it's hard looking at me to understand how that could have been. And then later in life, I was hired to turn the brand around and make it a success, which we did as a team, and it was really quite fun. It was a 3-year turnaround. We went from 120 million to 240 million, then we sold it, and then I could piece out and go do something else. It was quite fun.
That's awesome.
The cords, my wife still wears those things.
They're so great. They're so great. So I know we warned you about this. We do have our first question out of the gate is always our heaviest hitter. Can you tell us what amount of time you spent in detention in middle school or high school? Were you a frequent detention participant? Were you a never in detention person? Is this your first time in detention?
Good. So in elementary school, they don't have detention, right? You just get in trouble and you go to the principal's office. So everyone knew me there, by my nickname at that point. I had a learning perception issue, which then created all sorts of issues for me in and out of the classroom. And they discovered it while I was there, and then actually I was able to address it with a really wonderful lady named Mrs. Lazar, who helped me with this perception issue 3 days a week. I'd spend an extra 90 minutes at school dealing with my issues. So that was my detention. By the time I was in the 6th grade, I was just a goody two-shoe skateboarder, surfer, runner that never really got in trouble. But probably most importantly because my mom worked at all the schools that I went to. And in high school, my mom was the attendance lady. So my senior year, I missed so much school, at least first and second class, because I was surfing all the time. And it was a joke with my teachers because they just got a note from my mom that said, yeah, Michael was busy.
That's amazing.
Your mom is...
No.
Your mom, I think, wins the prize as the coolest mom of all time.
Yeah. My mom would have thrown me under the bus.
She's like, she used to be 5 feet tall. She's not that tall anymore. But sweetest little lady I ever met. I think she's the shortest Dutch person, too. She has a Dutch last name, but every Dutch person I ever meet says she's too short to be a Dutch person.
Wow, of Dutch and Belgian heritage. That doesn't happen often in the cycling.
Yeah. It's a Flemish.
Yeah, I mean, we got to see that rivalry played out via millimeters this Sunday.
Oh my goodness! And I watched that attentively. That was close.
Yeah.
It didn't quite play out the way I wanted, though.
You were cheering for West?
Yeah, and our 18-year-old son looks just like him too. So I call our son, his name is Johan. I call him Wout.
That's not a bad thing to look like Wout Van Aert.
No, he's a fairly handsome dude. I don't know where he came by, but his mom is rather attractive. So.
Well, let's see. Here's our. I mean, I get the sense this is kind of. I hope this is kind of how this interview goes. It's sort of just roving all over the place. But one of our other questions that we've been asking this year, this whole endurance school thing and detention, came out of the fact that Molly and I were looking for ways to keep athletes and to keep our basically to keep our business engaged during 2020 and the pandemic. Two-part question for this. What has 2020 taken away from you, and what has it made room for?
So it's taken away something that's not that important, which is money, lots of money. What it's given me is lots of time with my family. Both kids, our daughter goes to boarding school, a fancy boarding school in Pebble Beach on scholarship, so she would normally be away. And our son, Wout, he had a scholarship to Fordham in New York City, and where they're doing remote learning. So they're both home. So the benefit has been we're all at home all the time. So we can slip out for a surf. We get to eat together. We actually watch stuff together. It's really quite amazing. And I know at some point all the money that we've lost this year we'll find somewhere down the road, so I don't fret it. It's also availed to me the opportunity to engage with people in ways that I normally wouldn't do, which is like kind of like what we're doing now. So the whole day is filled with like this type of activity, and that's not necessarily a benefit, right? It's kind of weird. But what it does is it reminds us when we see people in person, like I saw you this weekend, it's like, oh my God, there's this real person, and it's so great to like look in their eyes, and they're handsome, and they're beautiful, and they're vibrant. People are rad, and so this reminds me of people's radness, and I feel so excited to go out and meet people.
That is awesome.
For our next question, we're gonna switch screens here for a second, everybody. We're gonna throw up a picture from the archives that Michael was very generous to share with us, and then Molly is going to grill him about the things depicted in that picture.
Okay. Hold, please. I don't think we're going to be able to talk on the next screen. I just realized. So I'm going to flash the picture, and then we'll come back from it. All right? Okay. Now, that was a beautiful bike frame, a great hairstyle, among other things. But can you tell us what a gator bar is? The sponsor that's written on that bicycle, what is that? Tell us more, please.
Okay, so I closed my eyes when you showed it, but I recollect the photo. So first of all, I have really long hair.
Yep.
I have a nose ring, which you couldn't see in there. and I'm wearing bib shorts, which I wore under my wetsuit. If we back up a little bit though, after I won the World Amateur Championships, I turned pro, and then that year I got hit by a car. So I had a year and a half of rehab before I could do anything again. And then I slowly worked my way back up. And that year that I directed the Hawaiian Ironman for Gatorade the first year, at the award ceremony, the VP at Gatorade bet me at the table, or someone bet me, and then the VP of Gatorade said, all right, we support this, we're going to get you a bike and anything you need. And the bet was that I couldn't be the first person to break 9 hours in their first Ironman. So, I thought, well, I can do that, no problem. I was like 198 pounds. So there would need to be, I'd need to lose some hair to lose like 10 of that. But that was, I think, the Ironman qualifier, which I wanted to, I was guaranteed to be in the race, right? But I wanted to legitimately win the race and be on the start line of my own volition. So what had happened is before that, I had come down with chronic fatigue, so I hadn't trained for a couple of weeks, but they had already paid for my entry for my hotel to be there. So I thought, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to do the swim and then drop out. And then I had my bibs on, so it's like, well, okay, I came out of the water in 7th. Why don't I just get on the bike and sort of fake my way through it? And then I came off the bike in 7th. In those silly, soggy bib shorts with the nose ring and that hideous bike. And then I caught everyone on the run and ran like a 1:13, I think, for that race. And then when I caught the guy who was leading, I knew him. There was about a half mile to go, or maybe a little bit more. And he had all the entourage with him, right? So I could see him. I knew exactly where he was. It was the out and back course. I caught him, and I go, dude, you blew it. And he looks at me and he goes, what? And I go, I'm a miler. I'm going to crush you. And then I out-sprinted him and won, and that was the photo coming into to T2. But I looked like a fat beast because I kind of was, but I could still sort of fake my way on the run. The next day, I couldn't even run an 8-minute mile. I ended up going into the doctor's office that week to test. They were testing me regularly on the U.S. Cycling cardiologist was testing us. And my Epstein bar numbers were through the roof, which is how they figured out the chronic fatigue thing. And I never got to go and race the Ironman. That was the last triathlon I ever did. At least I went out with a bang, right?
Yeah. Going out as champion.
But now whenever I see that guy, I always say, dude, you blew it. I'm a miler.
All right, since you brought up being a miler, then we have to talk about Once a Runner. Is that a book that is in your personal, is that a book that you know, that you love?
Yeah, that was written like in the 70s or maybe earlier. I think it had a purple cover, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Yes, and I also have to go back a little bit and say, I'm not really a miler. I just use that to psych him out. I mean, I've run like a 352, 1500, which isn't very fast for a real miler. Like a real miler would go, dude, you're not even a runner.
Mm-hmm. There's a great apocryphal story of some kid meeting Frank Shorter, and Frank Shorter's like, oh, you ran 4:30 in high school. And the kid was like, oh my God, like, how do you know that? Like Frank Shorter knows me. And Frank Shorter is like, everybody ran 4:30 in high school.
Yeah. Whoa. Frank is an extremely nice guy. And as you probably know, he was good friends with Prefontaine. And I've spent many hours chatting with Frank, either on the phone or in person. And you may recall that, like, right after he turned 40, he got into duathlons. And so that year that I won the World Amateur Championships, he was in the race. And the whole lead pack, we came in, we did the first 10,000 meters. There was about 7 or 8 of us. We ran 31:25, and I remember coming in, and he was like laughing. But the good news was he couldn't ride a bike, so we all dropped him. But he's a super nice guy. See, this is how the conversation's going to go. Lots of tangents.
Yes, yeah, that's great.
We're here for
We're
that. Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
we're
We're
we
here for
are.
that.
I think we're well prepared for lots of tangents.
All right.
Yeah.
I have to bring it back a little bit though. Can you please tell us about that product, the Gator Bar? Why is it no longer available? Why can't we have any? Where is it? How good was it?
The bike looked really good.
The
Didn't it?
bike looked hot.
Yeah. I mean, if you like bouncing like this,
Mm-hmm.
uh, absolutely no stiffness. So that paint job on that bike too, which cost $1,000 just for the paint job, was the packaging color of the Gator Bar, which I actually did think went to market, but it was unlike anything you've ever tasted, unless you've like got the blender out and put blueberries and raspberries and cardboard in there together with like some sort of soy milk or something and blended it up and then put it into a bar form. It was super tart, super weird. They wanted to do fructose, and it didn't do very well. And the reason why is because it tasted terrible.
It's a major flaw.
I think if you're making a food product, you really want it to taste good. And all of us as endurance athletes have endured our fair share of really bad tasting bars. I mean, our whole endurance lives, right? And this was an attempt to do something that wasn't like all the other bars, which was pretty much our bar at the time. But it was disgusting. But the bike looked good, and so did the paint job.
That's important.
And that's really all that matters. Um, so in your TEDx talk, you talked about something called creative disruption, and I was wondering if you would talk a little bit about what that means to you and how you have put that into play in your life.
Well, working from here backwards, now we hear about creative disruption all the time, and it's like this watchword or this overused phrase that kind of irks me because I named my company Creative Disruption many years ago, and it was based on my application of what I felt were the appropriate things to do to capture people's imaginations for a brand. And it means that you really have to shake things up, which is what I like to do. And it started when I got hit by the car, and I ended up going and starting my career by working in the warehouse of my main sponsor, which was called Edgeware. So Edgeware sponsored Scott Molina, um, a guy named Brad Kearns, Andrew McNaughton, Lance Armstrong, uh, a much slower, uglier guy named Michael Marckx. And I ended up going to work in the warehouse and like sending boxes to those guys. And I worked for this company. I couldn't race. I couldn't do the things that I wanted. I was going through a year and a half of rehab. But what I did know is that I was the 23 or maybe 24-year-old archetypical consumer that they wanted to connect with. And they weren't doing it the way that my mind said they should. So I would constantly bug the people in the marketing department, hey, this is how you want to communicate to me. Let me help you with the tone, with the language, with the vibe. And that ended up being the beginning of my marketing career, if we can call it that. And it had to do with sort of slapping people in the face cleverly to get them to wake up. And I've always taken that approach to all the different companies that I've been asked to turn around or otherwise help. And that is, most companies get into some sort of a groove, just like we do as athletes, right? Without proper coaching, we're motivated, so we train and we train and we train, and all of a sudden, all of our rides are extra medium. We're never doing the intense work that we want, and probably not going slow enough. We're not creating the dynamic and the breadth of our training experience to get the advances we want. Brands do that too. They get into a groove and they think their ad campaign's good and good enough, and they don't tend to the ever changing dynamic in the general cultural zeitgeist or the people that they're trying to communicate with. So every time I come in, I do an overhaul and I see that the people are tired. They're tired of trying to be interesting. And so I come in and say, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is how you were founded. Let's get back to the way that the reason why the brand was started. There has to be a reason why it was started. Let's get back to that and then exploit that in really clever and interesting ways. So for instance, at SPY, when I was turning around SPY, I didn't have any money. The 5 CEOs before me had collectively lost $55 million. So the board of directors that hired me figured I would be the fall guy. I'd take it into bankruptcy, and then they'd blame me. But they also liked my plan, so they left me alone. So what the plan involved was creating something that no one had ever created before, which was called the Happy Lens. So the Happy Lens was the first ever patented therapeutic lens technology, because what it did was it allowed in a certain amount of blue light, long wave blue light, which is the good stuff, short wave blue light, which is the bad stuff, blocked out all the bad stuff, let all the good stuff in. But most importantly, it was the happy lens. And so any other lens would be the unhappy lens. But not having the money that, say, Oakley would have to put into this, I couldn't name it some crazy Oakley-esque unobtainium name. I had to go back to the most important thing that we all want in life, which is happiness. Now, I didn't have the money to do it, so what I did is I created something that was really, really disruptive. Using a billboard, one silly billboard in Encinitas that cost $3,300 for that month, and a big light blue canvas with happy to make you, let's see, happy to sit on your face was the first one. And I know I'm rambling here, but there's actually a good story at the end of here. The Clear Channel that owned that said, if anyone complains about this, we have to take it down. And so what I did is I contacted the local paper, patch.com, and told them about this. And so they posted a poll the next day, and it was a picture of the brand new billboard that said clever or crass, vote. And then it was a forum. It's the most engaged post they've ever had in the history, because I had my own team on both sides playing it. So I had one person act as a concerned housewife who thought it was offensive, and then another person acting is like, what's wrong? Sunglasses sit on your face. What's wrong with that? And back and forth and back and forth. And then I had one of my coworkers call the Clear Channel, acting as a concerned citizen, to complain about it. So then they called me and said, we told you, we have to take it down. That was after 6 days. So they told me they were going to take it down at 6:30 a.m. the next day. We had 60 people out there protesting them taking the billboard down, and all the TV cameras with the helicopters filming it. So I spent the next few weeks on all the TV talk shows explaining the Happy Lens, explaining the billboard. And that was in September. The Happy Lens didn't even land in the US until February 1st. And when it did, it sold out immediately, transformed the organization, and the whole thing was built on happy. Every month we did some other offensive or one notch below offensive billboard, and people loved it. The great news was Adweek did 2 articles on it, the Huffington Post. Every major magazine did stories on this $3,300 billboard of happy to sit on your face. And that we parlayed that into 15 quarters in a row of year-over-year growth, all predicated on the idea of happy. It's still, the Happy Lens is still the only ever patented therapeutic lens technology by this little silly company in San Diego that happened to be publicly traded at the time. Do I need to go on?
That's an amazing story.
So any brand that is feeling stale or not growing the way it should requires some creative disruption. That's one example of many.
That is an amazing answer to that question. Thank you for that.
Is our time up now?
No. And I have, so is the first step in creative disruption remembering what your purpose is? So you said with the process that you went through with that company was remembering what they had set out to be. Is that usually the first step?
It always is, and I think if we brought Simon Sinek into the picture too and put him over here in the corner, he would nod his head in affirmation that anytime a brand is experiencing that, you have to ask that question: why was the brand started? What's its reason for being? You know, why are we here? And then people go, oh my God, that's so different than what we're doing now. And if that reason for being was so strong, if that why was such a good idea, you get back to doing that. But the best way to engage the staff and the people and your consumers is to slap them in the face, to surprise them. It's a gentle slap. It's more like a loving one, like your mom might. And you remind them, hey, that we're here and we're interesting, we're fun. And then you repeat that over and over and over again, or whatever your brand proposition is. You have to get back to telling that story in a creative way.
The light just got really interesting in your room when that door opened.
So my son, wow, just let the dog in. So if you hear a dog barking, you'll know why.
We are not opposed to dog cameos, so don't worry if that happens.
We're dog friendly here too.
Oh, good. So we already have a question in chat. We have somebody who wants us. Yeah. There are people. It's a very active chat day, I have to say.
Wow.
I know. I probably should have warned you about that.
No, this is that's like the thing we do is like, this is actually like a sort of stupid old school idea. This is like a live interview show.
Well, let's have it.
Is your dog's name Ruffy? Is that right?
It's Ruffy, yeah.
Okay, so this person definitely knows you. Yes, I'm on it. I'm supposed to ask you about your beer mile time.
Okay. When I was younger, post-college, I ran sub-5, but it was only 4:59. But as an old man in the 45-plus category, I ran 5:25. So I'm good at drinking beer. The interesting thing about that 5:25 is I hadn't run since the previous beer mile a year earlier. So I ran 5:36 that year and knew that I had to run 5:25, but I didn't run in between, but I was really good at drinking beer. So what I did is I reduced the amount of time with the beer so that I could accommodate for my slower running.
Oh, now that's a strategy.
Yep.
And that's one beer per lap for 4 laps. Is that what the beer mile is?
Yeah, the Kingston rules are that you have to shotgun the beer first and then start. Some people do it in reverse. I think either way is great. What's more great is watching people, a few things happen. Really fast runners go really slow and you laugh at them. Not very fast runners like me go fast and we laugh at them. People finish, but in order to have your time be official, you have to make it 10 minutes before you lose your cookies. There's a 10-minute rule. And then the other thing is, I know none of you guys have done ecstasy, and neither am I, so I'm relying on third-party resources for this, but it seems like all the people that do the beer mile, and there were 53 of them in that race, they're all on ecstasy afterwards because they just pounded 4 beers in a short amount of time, and they're loving on each other and kissing and like expressing things that they wouldn't normally do. It's a really interesting thing to go and watch, and even more interesting to go and do and watch.
I think this record has since fallen, but for a very, very long time, the beer half marathon record sat at a certain time. What do you think it was? What's your guess for the beer half marathon record? It was set for like 10 to 12 years. Nobody got close.
Is it 13 beers?
Yeah, 1 beer per mile.
What do we do with the .11? There's no beer.
I think beer.
I think it would be possible to run a 6-minute pace, so 1:18, and drink those beers.
The record stood at 6 hours and 7 minutes for about 15 years. That was the fact.
I could run a 1:18, no problem.
I think it did eventually get broken by somebody who ran a 1:47, but I think the problem is attrition.
Mm-hmm. People are like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Is that the problem with anything?
Yes.
Well, yes. I think people just be like, what am I doing out here? Like, I no longer know what I'm up to.
Well, you need someone there to remind you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't lose focus.
It's a crew event.
Let's see, I want to get back. I'm trying to remember what my follow-on question to one of the branding, to the branding question before. Maybe look at, okay, yeah. So, the Belgian Waffle Ride, originally launched as a marketing initiative for Spy Optic. I wonder if you could tell us, kind of continuing on that vein about Spy and creative disruption, why the Belgian Waffle Ride struck you as a good idea for a marketing initiative.
So we have to go back before that. There was a ride called the French Coast Ride that was an invite-only ride that my friend Dave Yeager created and ran for many, many, many years, decades in fact. And it was always a privilege and an honor to be invited because he brought you into his parents' home. It was a familial thing, and then you'd go and you'd hammer each other. And I asked him permission. I was like, hey, would you mind if I did the Belgian Waffle Ride and turned it into something different, but yet still had its roots in what you've done, which is make it really hard, invite cool people, and feast on instead of French toast, so feast on Belgian waffles and Belgian ale. And of course he did it, and he was one of 3 winners that tied that first year. So perhaps one of his greatest athletic achievements was the yellow jersey that he won. And then he subsequently retired because it just got harder and harder each year. I don't blame him. But the idea was to, again, we were turning around this brand, and performance was one of it. So performance was triathlon, cycling, running. We created products for that. We had just launched it that year. And so for each silo, thinking surfing, snowboarding, motocross, we were going to do some interesting event that was unlike anything else, but we started with cycling. So the idea was, let's bring this happy approach to an event that is just dreadfully miserable. So really hard event in the dirt. I love racing cyclocross. I'm Belgian. My family, I love long races, so let's put all those things together selfishly and then have beer because I like that the most. So literally from its conception, it was meant to be a brand, BWR. It was meant to be an experience that you would tell others about. So the first year was invite only, 136 people, 118 of which finished. The only ask was that if they enjoyed it, that they tell other people that they enjoyed it. And then the next year, we charged people, and it more than doubled in size, and then continued to double in size because of people having a miserable time, but then saying, I can't wait to do it again. And then every step of the way, every communication, every email I wrote, every ad that we built was to sort of touch on the brand sensibilities of the BWR, which is, this is really fun and really miserable, and those are the best things in life. And it's the juxtaposition of those things that come together and are the hallmarks of the Belgian Waffle Ride and continue to be. So as you experienced this weekend, it was really hard gravel, but not exceptionally hard. It will continue to get harder and harder in Cedar City for the next several years. So, but at the end, you had that miserable climb and the most crazy technical 4.4 mile mountain bike sector that came at the end that, you know, we had warned everyone about, and that's one of the hallmarks. So the climb is a hallmark, and the single trackers. Those things will remain, and the course will morph and change in interesting and fun ways, and constantly keep people on their toes. And bringing those two things together, misery and family and fun. And that's what the brand's about.
You say final climb. I think you mean that final hike.
Yes, for many, they got off their bikes and walked it.
Oh yeah, yes,
including
including me,
including some strong riders.
He's crazy gear.
Yeah. And even if you had the right gear, it was so dusty. Keeping the rear wheel planted was almost impossible.
Oh my
God. But you should know that every BWR, I've always ridden the course before on 25 millimeter tires, so that I knew that it was passable by anybody. And for this course, I rode it on 32s, so I know no one had skinnier than 32s. But man, you want like 40s, and you want gearing, and you want it to end, and you also want good beer at the end.
I had both 40s and a lot of gears, and I was still walking. Yeah, it was wonderfully difficult.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the course creation process? How do you go about selecting a course? The same person in chat would like to know if you feel like a sadist when you're creating them.
I don't even feel like a masochist, because when I create them, I do so selfishly, right? The event was a selfish endeavor from the beginning. And when I do it, I'm like, wouldn't it be fun if we added this? And so each year, I would try and find ways to add in things that people would say no way about. And you guys should know that I have people that are part of the BWR family that would tell me, dude, you need to make it easier. People are over it. You need to quit making it so hard. And those are the people that would inspire me to make it longer and more challenging. And I think we've kind of reached our wits' end with San Diego. And as far as the county goes, I just can't get them to allow me to do the things that I want. But in Cedar City, they're sort of wide open. Even like the private landowners, where in San Diego, they tell you to take a hike. In Cedar City, they're like, oh yeah, no problem. Send me an email. Like that was the paper trail on much of the permitting. So the one thing that was so challenging this year was it was opening day for hunting season, which is a 2-week window. So we were screwed with our date. We chose the date not knowing that. Next year it won't be during hunting season. So much of the beautiful terrain that's in and around Cedar City we couldn't touch. So the course that was informed by staying away from hunting places. So I had to carve it up and go around things, circumnavigate areas that I would normally go into that people would hate me for. So I feel like in some ways this first year was sort of a gift. It was neither sadistic nor masochistic. It was just like, yeah, whatever, it's only 6,000 feet of climbing. It's a piece of cake. So what if you have to walk your bike at the end? Next year will involve forest, much greater and beautiful areas. It'll be 128 miles. There'll be no bike path, but there will be the toll Bagg, which is the mountain bike sector, and there will be that crazy climb. But there'll be a lot of other things that people will be cursing the day I was conceived.
This kind of goes back to when you were saying that you were packing boxes in the warehouse, and then also sort of touches on what we were just talking about being able to intuit what people want. And if BWR, like, knowing that there is a subset of people that want, sadism. And so when you were packing those boxes in that warehouse and knowing what the target audience wanted, is that something that you have learned through your time in marketing, or is that something innate?
Well, I think we all have it, right? We all know how we respond to billboards or ads or pop-ups that we get. There's actually some pop-ups that we go, oh, I'm going to watch this. So that's clever. Most of them we don't. So I think we all have an innate understanding of what moves us. So I think it's important as marketers for us to realize that our own intuitions are usually pretty accurate. But what's important in any discipline in life is to be a student and to continually learn and read books from smarter people and listen to people that know what they're talking about, or listen to people that just have opinions. So listening, reading, learning, those things are really important. You get to learn in life no matter what it is, even if it's about training or nutrition, but certainly about marketing, because we have access to a lot of digital information now, right? A lot of things a lot of data that can help inform our decision making. But in my opinion, the most important things are the emotional ones. So when I lecture about this stuff, you can sort of separate branding from marketing. A lot of people conflate those two things. Branding is the emotional thing. It's like the storytelling, the colors, and all the things that affect our psyche in ways that the data don't. I think companies fail when they rely on just data, and they never create stories. You know, what happens when you rely on data is the data says that it's this black bib short in a size medium that's going to sell the most. And so what happens is you're offering, the sales guys who keep saying, I need more, at SPY, it was more ugly black wrap sunglasses for men. That was the thing that it got distilled down to, because they weren't being creative and disruptive. You have to offer a lot of different things that the data tells you to. And then you rely on what the data says about those new offerings to morph and continually change your offering to people to keep them excited. So for me, I want to just keep learning from the data, from people that I hear from, and also from my own education that I get by way of listening to smarter people. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's my attempt.
That's great. That's a great attempt. That's really helpful. Speaking of people that you learn from and sources that you pick up on, what are some things that you have been reading recently that have really spoken to you?
There's a fairly new book called "The Obstacle Is the Way" by Ryan Holiday. It's a short read. In essence, it says, you know, the things, the barricades in front of you, the things that are saying no, those are the things you go after and you remove. I know when I was living in Palos Verdes and started racing my bike again, I had to climb up this hill to get to my house. And it drove me nuts. I hated it. At the end of the ride, and I got to climb up this stupid hill. So I would try and find ways to go around it. And that always ended up being worse and silly. And it was like I was this chicken shit that just couldn't deal with that hill. So then one day I said, you know, I'm just going to love that hill. And we can do this with toxic coworkers. We can do this with all sorts of facets of our life. And what I did was, okay, instead of hating that hill and avoiding it, or hating that toxic person and avoiding them, I'm going to love them. And so I rode up that hill as hard as I could and got the KOM. And that totally changed my relationship with it. And now I'm going to protect that hill. And if anyone tries to, motor pace up that thing or ride their e-bike up it, I'm going to go back and take it. And we can take that same approach. That obstacle, that toxic person, that name the barricade, if we can dismantle it, disintegrate it, and remove it from our lives, mentally or physically, we can succeed. And these are practical things that we don't do, because our natural inclination is to avoid that person or to avoid that hill. No, embrace it, love it. So much joy comes from that. And you also, you start to remove the psychic clutter, the negativity that your mind typically gets filled with. You start to fill it with positivity. I can't wait to get to that hill. I can't wait to see that person that's a nightmare and love them. and love them and love them and love them, and have people around me go, how is he so loving to that person? We can all do that stuff. I think it's a great approach. So that's the book. Yeah.
That's great. Slight shift, but I'm really interested in this hill by your house that you love. As somebody who has designed some very hard courses in your life, what are the rides that you would go on if left to your own devices? What's your favorite route?
I really like doing the Wednesday ride, which is tomorrow. It's a flat ride that we have here in San Diego. It's only, if I were to just do it from my house, it's only 60 miles, but it's just all the fastest guys hammering. It was started by triathletes in the 80s, so that's the first time I did it. We actually would go on the freeway for part of it. Now we go on Camp Pendleton, and it's just the most awesome ride there is. So, like, I love that being a Wednesday ride because you got the road stuff. You're doing 32 miles an hour with the guys you trust. And then typically in non-COVID times, there is the Saturday ride that we have here that's morphed into something really cool. And that's hilly and painful, and it's all the same best guys. And then the in-between stuff is when you should just be going out and enjoying riding your bike, and sometimes you sprint up the hill, sometimes you don't. And it's sort of like the fartlek training that we did so much as a kid when I was running. You'd go out for a run and you'd sprint, and then you'd jog and you'd sprint. I would love to just take my general road bike has 28mm tires on it, so I can take it anywhere. And I like to just go and explore and not be fettered by the idea of having to go fast, having to have the average mile per hour be 22 or 23. To just go and explore and enjoy the act of riding a bike by myself. And then the other thing is, what I'm really missing, and I think we all are, is riding with other people. Because I really have only done a few group rides in the last 8 months. That dynamic always is either the joy of being social or the pain of like people attacking you. Those are great things to have in your life. So I like to mix it up. And then there are some days when I feel good and I'll just hammer certain things as best I can to see what I'm capable of doing compared to what I used to do.
Let's stick in the cycling subject now. You named your company Monuments of Cycling. And so of the 5 traditional monuments of cycling, Paris-Roubaix, San Remo, Flanders, Liège, and Lombardy, which is your favorite and why?
I think it's easy to say Paris-Roubaix because to me it seems to be the monument of the monuments. Just the number of sectors, the terrain that it covers, and then the pageantry of finishing in the velodrome. It's just so romantic. But I think that like the Flanders, the Ronde, that race, because it's so confined in a fairly small area, in a fairly small country, and a fairly small portion of that country, and the small roads, like the skinny little roads, and just the way it wends its way through and repeats different climbs. There's something really, really cool about that too. And I'm not really that much of a fan of the fall classic, although I'll watch every second of it. It doesn't capture my imagination the same way. But if I had to pick it, it would be Paris-Roubaix. But the Belgian Flandrian ones are the ones that I think are the also-rans.
So I'm going to stick with the athleticism theme, but shift away from cycling. Can you tell us a little bit about the role that surfing has played in your life?
Yeah. I grew up, my dad was a real beach goer. My parents met at the beach on a blind date, you know, when they lived at the beach. My dad lived at the beach. My parents are still together. I got to ride my first surfboard when I was 10, and like the bike, it captured my imagination. And I saw the surfboard as this escape from, I mentioned the challenges of my own perception issues. And so cycling and surfing sort of both served as interesting escapes. I really got into surfing in high school, but I also was running and riding my bike and doing those things too, and playing soccer. But I kept surfing all the way through life, even though like I played soccer in college. I was also on the surf team and the cycling team, and I also ran and I swam. So it's always been a part of my life. And then after I got hit by the car and stopped racing, I fairly quickly after that got a job working in the surf industry, which then eventually the then publisher of Surfing Magazine tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I really like the work that you're doing. Why don't you come and interview for this marketing role at Surfing?" And so I brought him a plan, and the plan was, you don't treat your magazine like a brand, and you're the number 2 to Surfer Magazine. Surfer Magazine was always bigger, and it started 4 or 5 years earlier. So it was the preeminent magazine. It was the Bible of the sport. And Surfing Magazine was this sort of, well, we're here too. And it was always trying to sort of say, well, we're here too, and not effectively. So I said, if you want to win, if you want to be bigger than Surfer Magazine, you have to create that juxtaposition, and you have to treat surfing like a brand. And I said, you're either going to be ing or which one sounds better to you? And so we actually created stickers after I got hired that just said ing. And then we built ing into a brand. And what we did was, instead of just like trying to be everything in surfing, we focused on one thing, so that the people could be the Bible of the sport and talk about longboarding and boogie boarding, and stand-up paddleboarding, and all these other things, which didn't exist at the time. And we focused on one thing, high-performance surfing. So basically we said, we're only about the best surfers in the world, doing the most radical things. So with that focus, it gave us a new leash on life, and we were able to say no to certain things and sit on these guardrails and go after high-performance surfing in a really emphatic way. And we addressed the staff that way. Everyone knew what we were about. Everyone knew what we were focused on. And we fairly quickly, over a few years, I was there for 5 years, we supplanted Surfer as the #1 magazine. So that meant we sold more, we had a higher circulation, and we got more dollars per ad page than they did. And that was a real fun thing to do early on in my career, is to know that if you disrupted things, that if you focused and you had a point of view, that you could change something that had been the status quo for 30 or 40 years. So that was a really fun thing, and surfing played an important part of that. And I competed when I was younger and have surfed big waves and raced paddleboard, and the water's been an important part of my life since I was introduced to it at 10. And that was what allowed me to segue into being the chairman of the board of the Surfrider Foundation, which basically champions the idea of protecting oceans, beaches, and waves all over the world, from development, from pollution, from private landowners that do bad things. And it's still something that I'm really interested in. I love surfing, and fortunately, my kids do too.
That's great.
Was branding something that you had to address at the Surfrider Foundation as well?
Oh yeah, branding and engaging people, right? When I came on board, they had like 60 different ways you could become a member, and so we distilled that down to like 3. Just simple, easy choices to make. Like, how about when you go to the supermarket to pick up a can of spaghetti sauce or a bottle of it, there's 70 different choices, and you're like, you know what, I'm not even going to have pasta tonight, forget it. So when you remove the clutter, when you remove things that can get in the way of specific things, ideas, you can hasten change in positive ways. Surfrider, during that time, what we also did was, people didn't understand what we were fighting for. They sort of got it, that we were stewards of the beaches, but they didn't understand there was nothing tangible. So what we started doing is articulating victories. We started counting victories and promoting them and putting press releases out saying, here's our fight now. We're going to save trestles. This is what this means. And then that would become a crusade, a mini campaign, if you will. And then once we won that, we would add that to the tally and we would promote it. We all want to win, but we sometimes need benchmarks, right? We need to know that, oh, look, on Strava, I got a few PRs. I'm getting better, right? Those benchmarks are important to keep us engaged. So that was another practical thing that we did from a branded point of view. Man, I talk too much.
No, this is
you're an interviewer's dream come true.
This is like the fastest this hour has ever gone by, and I still have like thousands of questions I want to ask you. I know. Don't worry. I won't make you stay here all night. I do want to let everybody in chat know that if they want to get a question in, this is the time to do it, though, because we only have about 4 minutes left. Which seems impossible. I feel like we just started.
This is kind of our asking for a friend question. For all of those struggling small businesses out there, what is something that you wish that you could like shout from the rooftops from small businesses that are dealing with this particular moment?
Like COVID, or just a challenge?
We'll take either.
COVID, just the challenges of a small business, primarily from a branding perspective. That's the thing that I'm deeply interested in what you had to say.
So we touched on it earlier. Typically, when I go in to help a company, I do like a brand audit. And the brand audit involves interviewing everybody. It's 360 degrees. So unbeknownst to like the CEO that's potentially going to hire me or the board of directors, I ask everyone. So I ask the janitor, I ask the boy or the girl that's working the front, I ask the team riders or surfers or motocross riders, I ask the retailers, I ask the consumers, and then get this 360 review of what it is that the brand is doing or not doing. And we don't do that in general. And then the other thing is, and I touched on this earlier, why did the brand start? What was its reason for being? Why do you exist? And if you can answer that question, then that answer should be the thing that you focus on. Because what happens is we start and then we become something else and we lose track of the real reason of why we're doing what we're doing. And then sometimes a brand can move with the times as long as it's engaging people in an interesting way that no one else is doing. So you want to have your own unique point of view, and that's like going back to the surfing magazine example, is it didn't have a point of view. As soon as it had a point of view, it had a reason for being, and then you can just nurture that. And then all of a sudden, that reason for being, you find all sorts of radical ways to support that idea and tell that story repeatedly. And we have to do that as stewards of a brand. We have to be able to find that emotion in there that people can attach to, and then continually repeat that, but not in the same way. So you're constantly reminding them of that emotional connection they have to you, but it's not the same way you did it last week or the campaign before. It's always new and fresh and relevant to the times that we're in. So we're in COVID times. How do you tell your branded story in crazy times like we're dealing with now? So what does your brand look like online? How do you connect with people when you can't? How do you make fun of wearing a mask when masks are important, but like, let's all do it. But let's all do it in fun ways, like we've done with Wattie and with Eliel. Like, let's turn the mask into a positive thing. We call it fun facade. Like, let's find ways to tell new stories and to adapt to this situation in positive ways. And this is a tangent, but I think it's an important one. None of us should be victims in this. Like if we're whining about um, anything, then we're wasting psychic energy that could be put into making solutions happen.
That's so important. Thank you. That is, I agree with the recent chat that this feels more like grad school than detention. So I've definitely learned a lot. I feel like Bagg, the next meeting that we have is going to be like 25 hours long as we really dig into our branding and purpose. But this has been just a phenomenal hour. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's been great getting to hear about you and your story. This is just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to take questions if there are any, or you guys probably want to get off anyway.
I think we've gotten to all the questions that are in chat. We have had a very active chat this time. This has been a lot of fun to see. But yeah, I think, is there anything else, Chris, or any other questions that you wanted to get to before we wrap up?
So many questions, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to monopolize the Wattie marketing meetings for the rest of the month.
Oh, perfect.
And hijack those, and we'll just talk about branding there.
Perfect.
I do one last question. So you talked about it in your TEDx talk. You talked about it with us at Wattie about what does heaven look like, and I want to ask you, what does heaven look like to you?
My vision of heaven and my mission is to be in service to people more and more, because I feel like I spent a lot of my early life being selfish. You know, with being a triathlete is selfish, or racing bike is selfish. Even playing music can be a selfish thing, although it's glorious when you have people to have a conversation with. I just find that I'm much happier. I float more when I'm helping other people, and I want to teach and support people and encourage people to get better on the bike, to get better at what it is that they find their fulfillment doing. I don't really feel the need to chase the money anymore, or anything fancy. Like, I want less in my life so that I can have more room to help people. I find the most joy there. And I wish that I knew that earlier, but I know it now. And even being at the event this weekend and people saying, hey, being able to do this event helped me survive this year. Just simple things like that, where people are so appreciative of being able to do something like an event, which is kind of silly, but it's not, because sometimes these punctuating moments in the calendar can be the thing that help us to help us get across things that are really challenging. I had one guy Instagram me saying, I lost my father to COVID, I lost my mother-in-law to COVID, all within a short amount of time. It's been a terrible year, but having this event has been the one thing that's kept me on the rails this year, and I'm so glad that you did it. Now, of course we did it, but we didn't know that person's journey was going to involve something so heavy, but that this outlet allowed him to have the mental health to survive something that was terrible, and to do so with a hope for the future, because those kind of things can remove hope. And my last message would be, hope is equated with happiness. If we don't have hope, we can't be happy. So we always got to have hope about something that we're going to do down the road. And for me, I have the hope that I'm going to get to help more people and communicate with people in helpful ways. That's heaven for me.
That's awesome. Thank you. And thanks for all the work that you do to support the community and to create community around awesome events. This has been fantastic.
It was really fun. I can't believe it's been an hour.
I can't either.
I can't believe that someone would listen to me for an hour.
Yeah, gladly.
We will have you back to listen to you for another hour. So we get so many other things. Yeah,
Part two.
Yep, we'll do a follow-up. And to everybody out there, thank you so much for joining and for participating, and for attending detention again. Make sure you come back and join us tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m. for Yoga with Amy Van Tassel. And we will see you again soon. Michael, thank you again. This has just been fantastic. This is one of our best ever, I think.
Thanks for enduring me in detention. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Okay. Bye.
All right,
guys.
everybody. Bye. Thank you.
Cheers.